12th house. My 12th house people. Hey, it's Debbie Williams, aka Soul Fitness Diva, and I have no idea what I'm going to title this video, but I'm just going to jump right into it. Based on my own personal chart and my extended family charts, research, and other people's charts, I have decided to do a commentary about the water signs and addiction, alcoholism, and abuse. My biggest focus here is Neptune because, in my opinion, it's the biggest culprit. Someone else might have a different opinion. I'm also going to talk about family synastry. And basically, synastry is a term used in astrology when one person's planetary placements affect another person's, like a spouse, a romantic partner, a friend, family member. An example of this is, okay, I'll start with my stepfather, or as I prefer to call him these days, my mother's husband. When you compare my natal chart wheel to my stepfather's natal chart wheel, you'll see that his sun in Scorpio is conjunct my natal Neptune in Scorpio in my second house of values and self-worth. He determined my self-worth through verbal, physical, psychic, and energetic violence. Also, his Chiron, and I'll get into that later for people who don't know what I'm talking about, but his Chiron, it's an asteroid. His Chiron and my mother's Chiron are conjunct, or conjoined, my 12th house ascendant in Virgo, where I have Pluto and Uranus conjunct. And Pluto, that's the ruler of Scorpio, the co-ruler of Scorpio. The 12th house is where, on the negative side, it can indicate low vibrational spiritual activity. Pluto is supposed to be like the underground. It can express a high level of spirituality depending on the rest of the chart. Again, Pluto, ruled by Scorpio, represents that underworld thing. Okay, the underworld, and being in the 12th house of karma, they call it the house of self-undoing, or being undone by others. This was a recipe for destruction. Add the synastry of the double Chiron conjunction, and it's like they were put here to wound. I was their wound. I was their wound. They wounded, and I was their wound. In quotes, their wound, in quotes. Yeah. Because I was unwanted. And I was a constant reminder of that, day in, day out, just on a regular basis. I was a reminder. I was in the way. I was a reminder that another man was there before him. And in those days, you know what I mean? 1963. For her, I was like, like that song that Diana Ross and the Supremes sang, Love Child, except not the happy version. In that song, You young people, look it up, Google it, listen to the songs, or read the lyrics or something. I was the dark side of Love Child. Uh, I was her shame. Pregnant, unmarried, and abandoned at 18 by someone who promised her his hand in marriage, went off to Vietnam a month later, then moved out of state after his discharge and married somebody else. Then I had the nerve to be born looking exactly like him. Now, both their Chiron, once again, is in Virgo. So that's their synastry together, plus my synastry because my Virgo, because of my Virgo ascendant. Anyway, continuing on with the 12th house and Neptune, its ruler. On this negative side of the 12th house, this is the place of escapism, like, drug addiction, alcoholism, self destructive behavior, karmic restrictions, limitations, institutions, like prisons, hospitals, mental hospitals, negative karmic bonds, uh, bonds to people, places, and things that you don't understand. Religious cults, religious abuse, and even a sick marriage full of denial, enabling, codependent people who hold each other back from evolving and even eat their own children in the process. It's a place of codependency versus interdependency. 12th house placements can also include the people who work in these places. If you're doing a career reading, people who work in prisons, people who work in hospitals. I think of Christopher Reeve, what happened to him. Some people could call that a 12th house thing, definitely limitation and restriction on a whole different level. I don't know, maybe these sociopaths who run around and do horrible things to people, maybe they have a limitation or restriction. Like if it has something to do with their Mercury or something, maybe there's just like, something missing, where they don't have a conscience. Just a thought. Okay, when you look at both my mother's husband and my natal charts together, and for people who don't know what I mean by synastry, okay, if you do that, you'll see that his Saturn is conjoined my North Node, and so is my mother's Saturn. They're both like right there. I could call her his partner in crime, but I won't. Now, to a child, these are parents who place severe limitations. This North Node conjunction, where a parent's Saturn is like sitting right on the child's North Node. It's like a place of severe limitation. This parent is like, if there's karma or whatever, I mean, they're here to put limitations on you, to hold you back, to pretty much stunt you. Now, in my half siblings charts, you can see the negative synastry playing out, on different places on their chart. But all of the placements and the aspects just pretty much produced a similar result. The stepfather's Uranus is conjunct his moon in Gemini, and that is conjunct my Gemini MC. And the midheaven, the MC is the midheaven. The midheaven, it's paternal, it's authority figures, from the home to out in the world, and the power and control that those authorities can impose on an individual. And in the home, in my case, it was a father figure. And in addition to that, this Uranus conjunct his moon reflects his serious anger and impulse control issues, and his determination, to impose domination and control over me. Just think bully, think target. Now back to Chiron. What the big deal is that Chiron represents our greatest wound, and the birth chart reflects that. And an example of that fact is that most of my family of origin and extended family are heavily involved in religious groups that practice shunning at worst, and at best, there's disunity because of dogma. And they do this because of the fact that there's no self-responsibility or introspection required. Because, once saved, always saved, that mentality. So why bother with self-development? Why bother with higher consciousness? Or, how do I treat people better? How do we treat each other better? And then the whole mentality, God is going to kill all of them after all, so, they don't matter. As long as they pay their tithe money, and as long as they proselytize, it's all good. And it's so strange how most of these people were more Christ-like before they got saved or joined the Watchtower Society. Anyway, what does all of this have to do with the asteroid Chiron's influence on my birth chart, or anybody's birth chart? In my case, it's my own personal blueprint. It's my energetic and subconscious snapshot at the time of my birth. And the fact that I have Chiron in Pisces conjunct my moon in Pisces, remember that's that Neptune influence. The Neptune is the ruler of Pisces. And when Chiron is in Pisces, I've heard some astrologers describe Pisces as being like the worst placement for Chiron, because this placement is a reflection of like massive betrayal by one's family, by one's faith community, and by other significant people. Okay, another interesting fact about me and the stepfather, and actually one of my half siblings. Okay, I have Neptune. I have Saturn square my Neptune. He has Saturn square his Neptune. She has Saturn opposition or in opposition to her Neptune. And it's really weird because there's no blood relation with him. And the synastry is just really powerful. It's really something else. Now, he has Neptune in his 4th house. And this is a little bit about his childhood and how this stuff just repeats generations. He's got Neptune in his 4th. And both of his parents were horrible alcoholics. I mean, they were functional but horrible alcoholics. It's functional, horrible alcoholics. And they abused him badly. I mean, they just humiliated him out in public, and they were verbally, psychically, spiritually, and I believe energetically, like what I was saying earlier, just abusive. Now, when my mother brought him home when I was 4, he decided to continue the cycle and she pretty much let him. My earliest memories of him is my mother hiding him from the police. What was it? What, 1968? It's like, this is my earliest memory. Oh, and the other memory is him leaving giant welts on my little 4-year-old wrist. And as a result of this seemingly karmic and unholy union, I have battled post-traumatic stress disorder since I was age 13. It's been a battle, and I keep on keeping on, but it is a battle, and I talk about it in my video that I did when Rosie Perez, came out about her post-traumatic stress disorder, and how her mother, used to punch her in the face, and the nuns were abusing her physically as well. I mean, it's it's another really messed up story. Now, what's interesting astrologically is that development of the PTSD, having these horrible panic attacks that just come out of nowhere. It's not the kind of PTSD where I go around beating people up. It's not the anger-based kind, but it is just really bad panic attacks. But anyway, it coincided with a Saturn transit to my 12th house, my Pluto-Uranus 12th house. I got Uranus, Pluto in my 12th house. And that happened in 1977. I can't mention the 12th house and Neptune without talking more about Scorpio. All my half siblings are like heavy duty Scorpio people. They all have different sun signs, but they have a heavy Scorpio influence, all of them. Stelliums, moon positions. 2 of them have the same moon in Scorpio. House rulerships. And in addition to the Neptune influences and placements that scream addiction, this stuff it's just unbelievable. Okay, my 3rd house is ruled by Scorpio. It's not in Scorpio, it's ruled by Scorpio. And of course, that is the house of siblings. It's other things, many other things as well. Communication, education, travel. The 9th house is higher education. The 3rd house is, like grade school, high school, courses, anything having to do with communication, technology, short distance travel. Yeah, these are my siblings. It just, the house of siblings is ruled by Scorpio, ruled by Pluto Scorpio. It's just, astrology is just absolutely amazing. Now, his Scorpio sun is conjunct my 2nd house, which is in Scorpio, along with his Mars and his Mercury conjoined there. This individual, I'm convinced that he's my nemesis. If there is really, a past life thing going on, I mean, it's just like, I don't know what the heck is going on. Because of circumstances, because of illness, I was forced to move back home after being gone for years. And I never expected to come back to this mofo. I never expected to come back here, but it just it is a big, long, ugly story, and I'm gonna save that for some other time. But anyway, I've got notes here just to make sure I don't get off track, as I tend to do that. That's my Pisces moon. Okay, and my Gemini midheaven doesn't help either. Okay. Now, the strange thing is that, okay, well, this part isn't strange. The fact that they followed in their parents' footsteps, and it's like, here I am asking, why did I do the polar opposite? Is it karma? Is it fate? You know, I believe that some of us, do get to have choice, you know, even to commit ugliness and the horrors that we see on the planet. But there are certain others of us, for some reason, we were given more responsibility and we are like fated to take the high road or else. I don't get it, but whatever. I don't know why that is. I've just like pretty much stood back and watched every generation in this family like grow weaker and weaker. Just every generation, weaker than the previous. Um, None of these people have been called to do better. They have not been called to do differently. They just carry on the cycle. And that's it. Okay, back to the parents. The parents also have Saturn. They both have Saturn in Cancer. And when Saturn is in Cancer or in the fourth house, it's in its detriment. That's just a really difficult place for Cancer to be. I mean, for Saturn to be. Now, my mother's Saturn is in her. Let's see. I've got a chart here. Um, his Saturn is in the 12th house, and her Saturn is in the 4th house, both in the sign of Cancer. And that's a double whammy for him. For her, it's a triple whammy because her moon is also in Cancer. And when I asked the question, why was I the different one? It's connected to my South Node. It's about my South Node, actually. Now, the way out. What is the way out? Back to my South Node. It's totally flipped to my mother's. It's completely opposite. And my South Node is in the 4th house in a stellium. Or it's part of it, it's like I have a 4th house stellium, and the South Node is like right there in the 4th house. And years ago, I left. I did, what the North Node is calling me to do, which is in Cancer, and I did leave to break the cycle, and it paid off. But Father Time, fate, whatever, decided to force me right back in here. And the issue is basically having had to do shamanic work. It's stuff that's beyond the psychological, beyond the sociological. I mean, it's just, dealing with energies and dealing, with the unseen, and having to, do a lot of facing of things. It's not that I wasn't already doing the work, not that I wasn't already on that path, but, it just like unveiled the deeper, uglier root of what is going on, at a very deep spiritual level, at a really ugly Plutonian, Neptunian level that most people don't want to know about. They don't want to deal with it. But it's something that I've been forced to do, that I have to do. And with so much in Capricorn, I mean, I'm a heavy duty Capricorn. I've got, as I said, I've got this stellium. It's in Capricorn. And I have a lot of positive aspects to my Mercury. And that's including, my Virgo ascendant. And I was able, because of that, I was able to get my kids out. And I was able to break the cycle with them. I've never been a drug addict or an alcoholic. I just, I don't tolerate alcohol very well. small amounts, like a beer. So I don't usually finish it. Whenever I do have a beer, it's just not um, anything that I have in common with where I come from. Now, as for their dad, it shows that I'll say as much synastry as I can. Basically, the regret of why the divorce had to happen is reflected very strongly in his Chiron conjunct Venus placement. I mean, he's got college under his belt. He's been gainfully employed for years, and the kids needed to see that. And that's pretty much all I'm going to say, about that. But there is the synastry again, because here I am, with this overwhelming, I've got to break the cycle. And then, he was in support of that. And I'll just leave it at that, regarding him. Now, looking over all of this, it's like I've been a part of, support groups, and I've been in leadership and support groups. People who are looking to help themselves, who have grown up in abusive, whether it's alcoholism, drug addiction, or whatever their parents were, whatever their parents did. I mean, these are the groups, and I've gone down the hall, I've gone to the AA meeting just to see what makes them tick. I've gone to the NA meetings to see, what makes them tick. I've gone to CODA, those women that how do you allow some man to come in and harm your child? How do you do that? I don't understand how you do that. So I would go in every once in a while. I would leave my meeting and go to their meetings down the hall and like study them and try to figure out what makes them tick. Just, and astrology tells me a lot. Well, that tells me some things, but astrology just tells me a lot as well. Anyway, I don't know, think the bad side of the empath, think, the narcissistic personality, it's all about me, 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 it's all about the mother and all of her neurotic needs versus the needs of her children, and, that's why they do it maybe. But I think that'll be my next video, the narcissistic personality in the zodiac or something to that effect. Okay, so anyway, kidding aside, well, actually, I wasn't kidding. The thing about the South Node and the Synastry on my chart is the fact that they're both in Cancer. I've got Capricorn in the 4th house, and that's where the stellium is with my South Node. And I also have my North Node in the sign of Cancer. Now, I've got transiting Pluto, and it's my hope that this separation of Pluto from my South Node will, bring a positive change. But I also have Saturn, and they say that Saturn is at home, and Saturn does really well, with Capricorn. And I look back on past transits to Capricorn, and it did bring upheaval, but it also brought, positive change as well. That was back in the 80s. But yeah, Saturn is in Sagittarius right now, which is my 3rd house. And it's on its way to Capricorn, my 4th. And, even when they're hateful and horrible and abusive, I think this is more so with the two, well, I'm not so sure about Cancer because they can hold a grudge for a really long time. The thing with Pisces is that we're just more forgiving, and Scorpio, same thing. They will hold a grudge forever, and I've seen Scorpio people go to a parent's funeral, who just dog them out, and they never shed a tear. I think that my Pisces moon is the reason why I'm having difficulty, even though I left years ago and I stayed gone for years. The fact that her moon is in Cancer, there's all that Cancerian stuff going on with the 4th and the 10th house, and then, her moon is in Cancer. I'm wondering. And then she also has her Mars is, speaking of more synastry, um, her Mars is conjunct, her Mars is in my fourth house. And on her chart, it's in her Aries stellium. But I want to say something to the good Scorpio people out there. I'm not saying all Scorpio people are evil. I'm talking about the bad side of Scorpio here. I'm talking about the bad side of Scorpio mixed with all this Neptunian stuff, with the drugs, the alcohol, the abuse, the crazy religions, and on and on, all the dark side of Neptune, with the dark side of Pluto is what I'm talking about. I'm not doing this video to trash, all Scorpios. And just looking over my notes here, I think that's it. I will see you at my next video. You take care, and yeah, that's it. Take care. Bye bye.